I want to start with two clips. The clips I'm going to start with, the first one is from John Kerry. The second one is going to be from Julian Assange, who was on Sean Hannity's radio show today. And it's fascinating to see that Sean Hannity aligned now with someone who he declared was waging war against America. But of course, it meets his political ends and his political desires. But here are the clips. The first clip is of John Kerry, who I think all in all handled this question exactly how reporters should be handling this, right? Like, I'm going to let him speak for himself, but unnamed sources, I don't care if they are U.S. officials, unnamed sources are never enough. When the stakes are this high, then it's not enough. Like, if you believe in what you're saying, and this is such a critical situation, put your name on it. And if you're not authorized to do so, then I don't know what to tell you. But John Kerry, I think he handled this question pretty good for John Kerry. Let's listen in.
Mr. Secretary, do you have any response to reports that Putin himself was directly involved in election-related attacks? Do you think the administration should have come out before the election more boldly with hard intelligence about these attacks?
Well, look, I am not going to start making comments at this point. I haven't commented on this publicly because of the job I do. But let me say today that I'm not going to comment on anonymous reports from intelligence officials that are not identified, that have quotes around the concept of intelligence officials. I just am not going to comment on that. But let me comment very specifically on your sort of question about earlier. Folks, we sat in the Situation Room, I remember, in the White House with the President of the United States, and the President made the decision based on the input that was carefully vetted by the intelligence community and presented to everybody, that he did have an obligation to go out to the country and give a warning. And he did so. Back in October, the President authorized the Director of National Intelligence to and the Department of Homeland Security together to make a very clear statement to this nation, to our nation. And they said unequivocally that they assessed with high confidence, that's what we said in October, with high confidence that the Russian government directed compromises of emails from U.S. institutions, including political organizations, and that these thefts and disclosures were intended to interfere with our election process.
Okay, I let that much play because, one, he's handling this exactly like I would. Like I'm trying to as a commentator. I wouldn't even say journalist. As a commentator, right? One, why would we run around the country with unnamed intelligence, quote unquote, officials? I mean, he even used the air quotes, which is funny as hell, John Kerry. But why would you run around commenting on that as if it's concrete evidence? That's irresponsible. That is bereft of any journalistic integrity. And even if you just consider yourself to be a commentator, that is below the quality of journalism and commentating that we need and deserve from people who claim to be progressive. Now, maybe the problem is they're not progressive in the first place, but we'll hash out ideologies later. Right now, just have some integrity enough with your craft that you are not willing to fan the flames of a potentially volatile situation just because it fits your political narrative using unnamed sources. Unverifiable information. Like nobody in the media has seen any of this information. They're getting it from unnamed sources, which means they haven't seen the information themselves. And yet they run around the country as though they've got ironclad proof that Vladimir Putin was sitting behind a damn computer trying to hack America. Now, on the flip side, he did bring to the table the comment that, the White House didn't wait. They actually mentioned this back in October. They have an assessment. They feel like Russia was involved. Okay, if Russia was involved and we have verifiable evidence, the next question is, or not the next question, the next statement is, let's do something about it, right? But never take that progression of thought based on anonymous sources that could be somebody who just woke up that morning and say, I want to get an interview today. I mean, we have no way of knowing who these people are, what their motivations are, or if they're even going to stand behind their information. All right, so anyway, the second clip is a clip of Julian Assange on Sean Hannity. And it's interesting for so many reasons, because just a few years ago, Sean Hannity would have loved to see Julian Assange get hit with a drone strike. But listening to what they had to say.
Julian joins us now on our Newsmaker line. Julian, welcome back to the program. Thank you for being with us.
G'day, Sean.
I know you follow the news closely. I know you see the narrative. Now, there is a big brouhaha in the United States. The same media, by the way, that WikiLeaks exposed as colluding with Hillary Clinton's campaign, with near hysteria getting up to the president and John Podesta with Hillary's campaign, claiming over and over and over again that it's clear, the CIA says so, even though there's no new evidence whatsoever that we didn't have prior to the election, and that the FBI contradicts, and James Clapper, the National Director of Intelligence, contradicts, that in fact the Russians tried to influence and the elections, and this hacked information came from them, and you're saying that is outright false. That's a falsehood.
Our source is not the Russian government.
So in other words, let me be clear. Russia did not give you the Podesta documents or anything from the DNC.
That's correct.
Can you confirm whether or not you have information involving hacked info from the RNC?
We received about 3 pages of information to do with the RNC and Trump, but it was already public somewhere else.
Okay, so in other words, there was nothing significant. There was nothing comparable to what happened. So what Reince Priebus said on NBC to Chuck Todd this weekend was true, and NBC had it wrong.
Well, as far as we're aware of.
As far as
we are aware of. Okay. That's enough of that clip. So Julian Assange, this just happened today, was able to get hold of a cell phone. Pretty good connection. I wonder if that was actually Skype. But anyway, he's speaking to Sean Hannity, and he says that this information, he could verify that this information did not come from the Russian government. I have to unpack that, right? Like, let's think this all the way through. Shout out to Max, who helped me think this through. One, why would the Russian government divulge that they are the source to WikiLeaks? That just doesn't make sense, right? It doesn't make sense for them to get an email that says, whatever, Kremlin dot, what is the .com for Russia? .ru? I don't know. Oh, I guess good, right? So Kremlin.ru, Vlad at Kremlin.ru. You're not going to get an email with a verifiable source connecting it to Russia. So he's saying, and he covered it. I give Assange this much. He covered his butt. And he said, as far as they are aware, right, it did not come from the Russian government. He said it much more assertively and affirmatively earlier, but then at the end of the clip, you see he kind of backed down and said, as far as they know, it's not from the Russian government. This doesn't mean that it is from the Russian government. I'm just saying that, we need some ironclad proof. I'm tired of the speculations on the left. I'm tired of the speculations on the right. Like, if there's evidence, bring it out, put it out. It's time to put it on the table. If the evidence is that concrete, you sure as hell put it on the table before January 20th. Put it on the table before the electors vote. I'm not really one of this that wants the Electoral College to usurp Donald Trump, because I think that's almost like an irreversible trend. That's an irreversible thing that I don't think that we can come back from. However, if we have ironclad evidence that Russia and Vladimir Putin was sitting behind his computer, hacking away at America in favor of Donald Trump, that's something that we should be privy to sooner rather than later. And my thing is this, I hate to say, if you don't show us, you don't have it, but it's like, show us the screenshots or you're lying. Show us the evidence, get someone else to verify this evidence. I mean, we're talking about, at this point, we're not talking about protecting the names of the innocent, because the names of the innocent were put out in the trove of emails that were dumped. So who are you trying to protect? Oh, it's top secret? Well, unclassify it. If it's that important and it's that accurate and that it's that condemning, declassify it and give it to the American people so that we can see this ironclad evidence. And I guarantee, the reason I say that is because this type of information, this, trying to trace back a hack, this is something that could be verified by the tech community probably overnight, not even overnight, in a matter of moments. So you have conflicting stories. So, of course, you're going to have conflicting stories. I think each of these stories have a little bit of merit to add to the table, right, to the conversation. There's one last piece of this, and the last piece of this is the White House. Now, I have a deeply rooted problem with unnamed sources spreading information like this because they have no accountability. They have no skin in the game. They could just start a fire and run away. Highly irresponsible for journalists to run with that kind of crap. But the White House has actually now put their stamp on the story, which to me takes it up a notch, because now we're saying that this is an accusation coming from the Obama administration. That's totally different than an accusation coming from two random unknown sources. All right. So and I think this was according to Washington Post today. The Obama administration directly accused Vladimir Putin of orchestrating the hacking of Democratic officials during the 2016 election. White House spokesman Josh Earnest said today only Russia's senior-most officials could have authorized these activities. So President Obama is expected to hold a news conference tomorrow before going on a vacation. He's expected to be asked with questions about this, and I'm sure at that point he's going to either reassert what his press secretary said or he's going to tack back towards something else. But the White House is officially involved. Now, I lend this. There's a lot more credence to this story now, to this accusation, because you have an administration putting their reputation, their name, and their access to the information. They're putting all of that on the line to say that this. Now, still, I want to see the evidence. I still want a third party to confirm this evidence. I know that's like wishful thinking, but that's still what I want, because I have no reason to trust the CIA. Like, what normal human being says, "Oh, I trust the CIA"? Just with a brief glance through American history, oh yeah, I instinctively trust the CIA. But it does lend a lot more credibility to the story that the Obama administration is willing to put their name, their reputation and his legacy. He's so worried about his legacy. They're going to put it on the line for this accusation. Okay, great. It has a little more. Now run with the story. Because the Obama administration has accused Vladimir Putin of this. And that's a story in and of itself. Whether it's true or not, it's still a huge story. It's still important. It's still significant, because the words of the president have, I don't even have to explain the ramifications of the words of the president to you. So even if it's not true and Obama's just saying this, that's like, I mean, that's a story for a lifetime, right? But all of these journalists who ran off the cuff with this story with unnamed sources, it shows you the lack of substance and the lack of consistency, because they would have called out Republicans for doing this. I mean, they would be saying the same exact thing I'm saying about them. They would be saying it about Republicans, had Republicans run with a story accusing Russia based on two unnamed sources. You got to be consistent, people. I need to give an update on one particular quote. The interview with Julian Assange is actually a 30-minute interview. Buried inside of that 30 minutes is a line that I want to give a shout out to Tony Shev on Twitter, at Tony Shev, 2 V's. Thank you for giving this to me. There's a line in here where Julian actually says this, quote, "Now, who is behind these? We don't know. These look very much like they're from the Russians, but in some ways they look very amateur and almost look too much like the Russians." So he's still kind of leaving a back door for him to say could be the Russians, but it's really sloppy and it's an attempt to make it look like the Russians. And then again, it very well could have been someone from Russia and not ordered by the state. But the burden of evidence, the burden of proof is on our side at this point. We claim to have the evidence. So let's clear up all the questions. Let's clear up any misunderstanding and put the evidence on the table so we can find out for ourselves.